and welcome to the World Affairs Council of Western Michigan's live stream broadcast of a conversation with Consul General Bart Twaalfhoven in partnership with the Netherland-America Foundation. I'm Michael Van Dennend, and I am the Executive Director of the Council. Now, on behalf of my colleague Erica Kubik and the Board of Directors of the World Affairs Council of Western Michigan, I welcome all of you. Thank you for adjusting with us as we program responsibly in this time of COVID-19. We hope that you will stay safe and that you will show grace to those in your community. The Council's mission is to empower the people and organizations of West Michigan to engage thoughtfully with the world. We do this with the support of 50 local companies, 11 educational partners, and many, many community members. Together, we seek to provide programming that is credible, objective, relevant, civil, and compelling. To change the world, we believe, one must first know the world. And you can learn more about what we do at worldmichigan.org. We are pleased to offer this program on Dutch-American relations and introduce the new Consul General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Chicago to our community. But first, I'd like to welcome Wilhelmine Keizer of the Netherland-America Foundation to say a few words of welcome. Wilhelmine?
Thank you so much, Michael. It is an absolute pleasure to be with you today, and a warm welcome to everyone participating in the webinar. Thank you also to Consul General Bart Twaalhoven for joining us today. It's a great honor to have you with us. My name is Wilhelmine Keizer, and I am the Executive Director of the Netherland-America Foundation. This webinar that we're doing in partnership with the World Affairs Council is one in a series of occasional talks and lectures that we hold on civil, cultural, and historical topics. The next NUF webinar will be held on June 1st at 12 Eastern. The NUF is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year, and our mission is to strengthen the bonds between the US and the Netherlands. To accomplish this, we fund educational exchanges for Dutch and American students and scholars. We sponsor cultural exchanges, and we foster business ties between our two countries. To make this possible, we ask for your support, and please consider becoming a member or make a donation. If you would like to learn more about the Netherlands-America Foundation or about the Michigan chapter of the Netherlands-America Foundation, please go to thenuf.org. We hope that you will enjoy this webinar and join us for future events.
Thank you so much, Wilhelmine, and we're very grateful for the partnership with the NUF. It's been a great one, and we hope to continue it well into the future. Our format for today is straightforward. We'll hear some opening comments from the Consul General, and then we'll have a chance to engage him in conversation about issues important to West Michigan. You may type your questions into the YouTube comments section, or you may text them to 616-308-6560. And we ask you to remember our Council House rules to ask your questions respectfully and succinctly. We're delighted to have Consul General Bart Twaalfhoven with us, and he was appointed as the Kingdom of the Netherlands Consul General to Chicago in 2020. With over 30 years in the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he has served in Spain, Turkey, Germany, Syria, and the UAE. And he was also the Netherlands ambassador to Slovenia and Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Before his appointment of Consul General in Chicago, he most recently served as Special Advisor of Consular Dialogue for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in The Hague. Please join me in welcoming Consul General Bart Twaalfhoven. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you, Wilhelmine, as well for the welcoming words. Let me start in expressing my gratitude to the World Affairs Council of Western Michigan and to the Netherlands-America Foundation for making this conversation happen and making it possible. Of course, we are very grateful to be in conversation with you and in dialogue with you, although it is always a sort of mixed feeling that we have at the moment, since, yeah, we preferred and we would have preferred to meet all in person. But okay, I think that maybe in the coming months that will be possible. And for now, this is absolutely the best option we have. And so I'm really delightful that we can communicate and that we can reach out in this way. I would also like to thank my two honorary consuls in Michigan, Paul Heulen in Grand Rapids and Percy Vrieken in Detroit, for spreading the word of the webinar, but also for keeping the flag of the Dutch high in Michigan, which is absolutely important. And let me greet in particular a long-standing friend, Ambassador Faye Hartog-Levin, the former US ambassador in the Netherlands, who is participating this morning and who has always been absolutely so active in promoting and supporting the bilateral relations between our countries. And I would like to present a close colleague of mine who's also participating, Andrea van der Grinten, who is the Senior Economic Policy Officer here in the Consul General, participating today as well. First slide, please. As has already been said, I have a long career in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the diplomatic service of the Netherlands. I have done so until now, fortunately, together with my wife, who is here with me in Chicago. And along the road, we got two daughters, one of which is here at the moment with us in Chicago. I've had my education in the Netherlands, in France and in Austria, and Michael already explained my whole tour of duties in the diplomatic service. And as you can see, I went through all these diplomatic rank and files in Europe and in the Middle East. So I thought for a little bit at the end of my career, it would be nice to experience something completely different. Because I think that is what we really enjoy in our profession, is having the privileged position to have the time and the profession to really get to know another country where you are working for that couple of years. And normally in our case, it is 4 years. And then indeed you get a good idea of how the country is run and what the people are feeling and what kind of prejudice you might have, because that is happening every time, all over the time. And to be honest, the United States, which is absolutely so appealing for a diplomat to go to, is also a country of a certain culture shock, like we had in Germany as well. And then you wonder, why a culture shock? Because the countries are so close to each other and are sharing so many values. That is true. It has to do with expectations, because you think that you know the United States, and we thought that we knew Germany. But at the end of the day, you are facing certain surprises, certain challenges that you don't face in your own country. Strangely enough, we did not have the culture shock in Syria. It was a sort of exploration. And when there was no water from the tap, yeah, you could have expected it. And when there was no electric current, you knew that it would happen. So in that sense, it is always very nice to go over the border and really live and work in a country where you have the possibility to talk to the people and where you can really see how the country is, and not as we in Western Europe often think that the United States is being represented by television series like Dynasty and Dallas, and maybe in the past by John Wayne. And yes, definitely you will find elements still here in the country, but that is not the United States. So yes, we are ever so happy that we landed here in Chicago, and then especially also in Chicago. It has always been on our hit list. So this is a great start. The start, of course, was a little bit difficult in that sense, because we came in the midst of the corona or the COVID pandemic. And that shielded us from all kind of personal contacts. In fact, the only personal contact we had until now was with former ambassador Hartog Levin. And for the rest, we are bound to regulations, both from the CDC and from the Netherlands. But we happily deal with it. And I have to say that I am so surprised and so pleased and so honored that the way of communicating with the Americans via Zoom appears to be very, very heartwarming, very open, and very successful. So in that sense, I'm really grateful to the Americans to accommodate us and to welcome us in this way in their country. The next slide, please. In Chicago, we are dealing with 150 years of very, very strong ties with the Midwest. And it is indeed the Midwest and Chicago that I'm mentioning now, because we all know that the Dutch nationals, they emigrated in vast groups to the shores of Lake Michigan on both sides. And eventually the majority ended up in Michigan. In the meantime, Chicago was becoming the economic center of the Midwest. And that led to the fact that the small honorary consulates that we have spread out somewhere in the Midwest were sort of consolidated in 1870 with the royal decree of our former King William III into a full-fledged consulate in Chicago. And that was last year, exactly 150 years ago. We started off with a honorary consulate, and after the Second World War, it became a professional consulate, and we renamed that. And sometimes even thanks to the lobby from the state of Michigan that really stressed towards the authorities in the Netherlands how important the work of the Consulate General in Chicago is and was for Michigan and all the Dutch. As mentioned, last year it was a very, very nice anniversary, but unfortunately we could not celebrate it. It was to be kicked off exactly at the end of April, being our National Day, and we started to postpone our events, but at the moment, or at the end of the year, beginning this year, we decided to completely cancel because we are already in the 151st year and heading to the 155th, and we keep the ideas in mind. But last year would have been filled with great receptions, with nice concerts, with very special exhibitions, and unfortunately, we couldn't do it. But the ties are strong. And we see that also from the picture next to the formal act of King Willem III. And that, of course, is a picture of our King Willem Alexander with Queen Maxima visiting Michigan in 2015. Royal visits are happening always and throughout the years. But the fact that our King and Queen did visit the state of Michigan within 2 years after their inthronization as King and Queen of the Netherlands, that is a very, very clear indication how important Michigan is for the Netherlands. In the first years, the King and Queen visited the capital cities of the major partners of the Netherlands. But in this case, they really went further and stayed a couple of days in Michigan and Chicago to stress these important relations and indeed to acknowledge the importance of Michigan and of all the Dutch living there for the Netherlands. Next slide, please. As you might well know, the Dutch Consulate General is part of a broader network here in the United States. In fact, in the United States, we have the broadest network of Dutch presence ever in the world in any other country. We do have our embassy in Washington. But apart from that, we do have 5 consulate generals in Chicago, Miami, New York, San Francisco, and since 2019, also in Atlanta. It once more shows the importance of all those different states and areas for for the interests of the Netherlands. Apart from these diplomatic missions, we also do have business support offices, 2 of them, in Houston and in Los Angeles. And business support offices are mere economic offices who are established in promising areas, promising economic areas, without the near presence of an embassy or a consulate. But they do offer sort of the same services as we have in our economic departments in the embassy and in the consulates, namely supporting Dutch business in their exports, in their contacts, in their investment towards the United States. Furthermore, we do have a number of offices from the NFIA. And the NFIA is the Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency. And the NFIA is trying to facilitate those American companies who would like to establish themselves or reach out to the Netherlands. And they can do that via the offices in Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and Washington. And that is a broad network where they really facilitate in starting up a business, a small business or a huge business in the Netherlands, and by that consolidating even more the relations. Apart from these professional organizations, we have 27 honorary consuls in the United States, out of which 6 are located in the Midwest. 2 of them, as mentioned, in Michigan, in Grand Rapids and in Detroit. Detroit being one of the bigger industrial hubs, of course, and Grand Rapids being the hub for all the Americans with Dutch descent and the Dutch who are living there. Next slide, please. The Consulate General in Chicago is covering 13 states. They're colored orange, so you can see it is quite a big slice of the United States. We are mainly dealing with economic affairs and looking after the economic relations between the Netherlands and those 13 states. For consular documents, like visa and passports, we have hired an external service provider, being VFS in Chicago. So in principle, we don't deal with visa passports anymore. But what we do is reaching out to the 2 communities. My mission is to plant the Dutch flag higher and taller here in the Midwest, but also to plant the American or the Midwest flag taller in the Netherlands, because every coin has 2 sides. And especially when you talk about economic relations, it is important that you both service the one side of the coin and the other coin and the other one. Therefore, connections are very, very important, personal connections. During my term of duty, someone once told me a good contact is quite often more important than a written contract. And right he is, because with good contacts, you can bring the world further and the relations further. So we are here to make the connections on the level of the authorities, but definitely also on the level of the companies, smaller companies and big companies, on the level of those people who want to start with a startup, and of course on the level with the Americans to understand the country, and with the Dutch to see if they are doing well. We are here also to make inquiries on behalf of the Netherlands, on behalf of the Dutch, on behalf of the Dutch enterprise, but also to answer some of them that we get from them. And all consulates general, and as well as the embassy, is there to organize missions. And in principle, of course, we would like to have missions coming here, but we definitely also facilitate missions coming and going from the United States to the Netherlands. We provide information in our case, mainly in the economic field, in tendency, in trends, in possibilities, in opportunities, what we see and what we discover. And as I said, increasing the Midwest visibility, that is clear. We definitely do a lot in matchmaking. And matchmaking also goes two sides. It is the matchmaking from Dutch companies who would like to get in contact with American companies, with American organizations, but also for American companies. If they would like to get in contact with Dutch ones, we definitely can facilitate them. We do market scans on behalf of the Dutch to see in which sector there are extra possibilities, like protein-based, the protein-based sector, like the medical health sector. All these kinds of market scans are being made and are being evaluated, and then we will see if there is any possibility to strengthen the relations in industry, in the academia, on these levels. And finally, but definitely equally important, is of course our mission on consular assistance, because we might maybe not issue visa and passports. We definitely do support the Dutch who are facing problems and challenges. Fortunately, the United States is a great country with great facilities. So even if a normal Dutch might face a problem, then it might already be solved within the structure of the American society. But still sometimes you have problems that they would rather discuss with the Dutch because then their way of thinking might be the same, or their solution might be more connected to the Netherlands. So consular assistance is definitely a big part of our mission here in Chicago. Next slide, please. As a Consulate General, we identified for ourselves certain areas where we see opportunities in the Midwest. And here I'm talking about the whole Midwest, our area, our territory of 13 states. And we see opportunities for Dutch companies, for Dutch organizations, for Dutch universities in food and agriculture, the local food production, where we can help out and where we also can be very instrumental ourselves, in plant-based protein sector and in the supply chain. The same counts for medtech. MedTech, of course, is very important. You know that here in this part of the world, in this part of your country. And so we see opportunities where we can bring partners together. And the same with the advanced manufacturing and automotive industry. And then I come more to Michigan, of course. Automation and robotics, but also increased local manufacturing and supply chain innovation and logistics, where we can have a big impact also in the cooperation and collaboration. Of course, we do identify these areas, but at the end of the day, where action is expected, that is according to the wishes of the companies and of the consumers. That always is very important, because we can start selling cheese, but if there are no consumers that do not want to eat cheese, then it is better to change your strategy. Next slide, please. The cooperation with Michigan for us is, of course, very, very important. I cannot stress that over and over again, because in the first place, we do share our heritage and culture and people. And when I saw this little photo, I sincerely thought it was the Netherlands, but it is not. This is a picture made in Michigan. I haven't seen it yet, I'm looking forward to it, but the windmill, the tulips, and that of course is only anecdotal, because at the moment it is not per se the windmills and not only the tulips that binds us, it is so much more. Between the Netherlands and Michigan, we have a yearly export of 440 million US dollar. And there is an import out of Holland to Michigan from 300 million. But in total, this trade and the economic relations, they do support 45,000 jobs on both sides, which is absolutely an enormous amount. For Michigan, we are focusing on smart mobility. We do have an MOU on that, and in particular, we are focusing on cybersecurity in the automotive industry. We have had several webinars on that lately, talking traffic, and this is an area where we really see potential to go further in the cooperation. Furthermore, we have water. Water, we are both facing a lot of water. We have a lot of agriculture in our countries, both in Michigan and in the Netherlands, and we have a lot of water. So there's a lot to discuss. Lately still, we had a discussion between experts, between organizations, about challenges and solutions at the intersection of water and agriculture, which is very, very important. Furthermore, we would like to share innovation in wastewater and drinking water treatment. And especially, therefore, because now there is coming up a bipartisan $35 billion water bill, which might facilitate cooperation in this field even more. We see possibilities in the creative industries. Michigan is very, very well known about architecture, about creative industries, but also Dutch design and architecture can be characterized as conceptual, open-minded, pragmatic, process-orientated, and innovative. And I think that we can team up in the framework of the Eindhoven Design Week and around the Detroit Design Month. There is a lot to earn and to win when we team up. And lastly, but very importantly, and as I mentioned already for the whole Midwest, is medical. The medical space is important to look at and to see if there are options and possibilities to work together. And although there are no concrete steps yet, it is expected that with the developments like the Grand Rapids Medical Mile, there is a lot to win for the two countries. Apart from all these economic possibilities and opportunities, we also are in very close contact with the politicians, of course, in Michigan. Given the Dutch heritage and culture in that state, we are in contact with the Dutch caucus in Lansing, and that is bringing us a lot. Next slide, please. For us in the Netherlands, the Midwest assets are very, very important. When you look at the talent that is available in Michigan, having strong possibilities to cooperate with the Dutch. When you look at the opportunities in the Midwest, indeed, in agriculture and food, in automotive, in life sciences, and so on, ways to go. So this is an opportunity that we always spread out to the Dutch. The location, very important from the Midwest, and especially also from Michigan, because from there you can travel to the whole country in the shortest possible time. The cost of doing business here in the Midwest is definitely lower than on the coastal sides of your country, which for a Dutch is always important to consider. And then the B2B market, of course. There's a high number of Fortune 500 headquarters in the Midwest positioned, which has an appealing factor for the Dutch companies. And lastly, of course, the business culture. And maybe that has also been influenced by all the Dutch being around in the Midwest, and especially also in Michigan. That is a down-to-earth business culture, which is to a high degree comparable to the Dutch one. Next slide, please. There's one project that will be announced shortly, but that I will present now for the first time in public, and that is Orange on the Lake. Orange on the Lake is a program that we set up here and that we are now in the finishing stage, where we try to connect well-established companies in the United States with experience and with knowledge, with startups and new investors from the Netherlands who are coming here. And by teaming them up, the ones coming from the Netherlands can learn from the companies being established here in the Midwest. So at the moment, we are in contact with smaller and bigger companies here in Chicago. We will start in Chicago with organizations who are willing to take up this mentor role and are willing to facilitate the Dutch companies to come here. And in the meantime, we are recruiting already companies in the Netherlands. And once that has been done, we will open this Orange on the Lake. They will have access to all their data, to their wishes, to their possibilities, and they can connect with each other. And we are confident that by doing so, much more hesitant Dutch companies will see the advantages of the Midwest and make the step to Chicago and from there to the broader Midwest. Next slide, please. Just a little slide on current affairs, especially in the Netherlands. COVID-19 is definitely not under control yet, unfortunately. The whole rollout of vaccinations that took too long to get started, but is now getting a real pace. But we are lagging behind when you compare to the United States. For the Dutch companies, both in the Netherlands and here in the United States, I have to say that they did face many, many challenges, as every other company in the world. But what I also have to stress is that the majority of them, they were able to adapt, and they were able to still look back in the 2020 to a profitable year. As a country as a whole, compared to the rest of Europe, we saw a relatively small retraction of the economy in 2020. Now that we are picking up as European Union again, we also see a somewhat smaller growth compared to other countries in the EU towards 2020, which is explainable because we lost less last year, so there is less to catch up in this year, but we are definitely doing well. As you might have known, 2 months ago, we had parliamentary elections, and that is definitely not the same as in the United States. In our case, 37 parties participated in the elections, fighting for 150 seats in the chamber. Eventually, 18 parties made it into the parliament, the maximum having 34 seats out of 150, and several of them having only 1 seat. That means that at the moment we are in coalition negotiations, because forming a government is quite a task. How to bring a good coalition together? Will it be a more liberal one, which in the Netherlands means more conservative even, and definitely not left? Or will it be a left coalition with maybe a liberal party in it? All cards are on the table now, but they do have major challenges ahead of them that have to be tackled. One of them, of course, is the fight against COVID. One of them being the climate change, renewable energy transition, but definitely one of the major ones is to stimulate the economy and getting back on track. In the meantime, we try to be present everywhere in the world with digital events and virtual missions, as you also do in your country. Unfortunately, I cannot give any positive news yet on travel restrictions. It is still only possible with a waiver, what you can ask for, but we hope that in the coming weeks that some green light from the European Union will come, and that will facilitate the Americans to visit the Netherlands again. Next slide, please, which is immediately also the last one. This is our consulate in Chicago. We are there for you. We are there for the Dutch. And whenever you want to reach out, please do so. Even if we might not know the answer, we are there to help you to find the answer. And it will be a privilege in doing so, and by doing so, in strengthening the relations between Michigan and the Netherlands. Thank you.
Consul, thank you very much. That was a very expansive summary, both of some of the goals of the Netherlands Consulate in Chicago, and also some of the things that are happening in the Netherlands itself. Thank you very much for that. That was very, very helpful. And I want to remind our listeners that you can ask a question of the Consul General. You can do that by typing a question into the YouTube comments section, or you may text them to 616-308-6560. We wondered, there's some question about Brexit. Of course, we hear so much about that here in the United States, and I think for many Americans still a confusing situation about how it's all playing out, and wondered specifically about the effects of the Netherlands on what's happened with Brexit and what negotiations are going on right now. What's the impact on the country?
Yeah, the impact of Brexit is enormous in our country. The United Kingdom has always been one of our major economic partners. And suddenly there are borders between us, borders that do not only take time, but also cost a lot of administrative work, and by that costing a lot of money. Apart from the fact that you will have to deal now in certain sectors with import duties. So we are more than relatively struck by the Brexit compared to other European countries. On the other hand, we have to be honest that we are so close to Great Britain and to London that quite a number of companies left the United Kingdom and established themselves in Europe, and quite a number of them in the Netherlands. One of them, of course, being the European Medicine Agency, which is a big European agency, bringing in also a lot of jobs, which is good. But I think we would have traded all these benefits for how do you call it, dispose the Brexit, but that's of course illusion that will not happen. But yes, we are heavily impacted by that, and you see that a lot of companies, they have to get to terms with it, but it will take time. It will take time to adapt. It will also take time to adapt to the new procedures to get to the other side. And you see also that some of the companies, they try to find a deviating route via Ireland. But yeah, it was quite disastrous. But okay, we have to adapt, and we have to accept the political facts that Great Britain is out of the EU.
A question or words from your friend Faye Hartog 11, and she thanks you for your kind words and wonders how your workload has been compared to non-COVID times. How has that changed what you're doing and what your workload is and the kinds of priorities you're making?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question indeed. We are quite sometimes wondering if we have less work or more. The interesting thing is that maybe the impact of our work might be less because of the fact that we don't travel, we don't meet people in person, which is so important in my profession. On the other hand, meeting people and traveling is also costing time. And that is the time that we are saving now. So when you look at your working day, maybe you're even more effective now because you're working from 7 in the morning until 6 in the evening, but that means that you have a good 10 hours of concentrated work. But still, I think that the impact of the work of a diplomat is 10 times higher when he can reach out. And as I said, sometimes, and maybe quite often, a good contact is so much more than a written contract, because out of the good contacts, other contracts may come. Out of a written contract, it might be, but it is not sure yet. So it is important that we start reaching out, meeting people and traveling as soon as possible. And we will, fortunately, in the coming 2 months, we will gradually go. As a Dutch, you are always a little bit disobedient to the rules of the government. That is part of our genes, because in the Netherlands, the rules and regulations are so much tighter than here in the United States. And in this case, I have to say, unfortunately, we are part of the Dutch administration and we have to adhere to it. But on the other hand, sometimes you don't have to tell everything, and maybe just take the car and go somewhere. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. We'll keep that under our hats, so we won't let that get out. Message, Goedemiddag, yeah, from the Frederick Meyer Chair in Dutch Language and Culture at Calvin University in Grand Rapids, and inviting you when the time is right to come to the campus and come to Grand Rapids. And a question from the professor there. What opportunities do you see to promote Dutch culture in the Midwest? Art, film, literature, language, holidays, cycling culture. What are some of the areas that you see that Dutch culture promotion can happen?
Well, thank you. That's a very relevant question indeed. And I think the professor is mentioning already quite a deal of them, which are all equally important. And I have to say that I'm very surprised, happily surprised and positively surprised to see how many people do study also Dutch language and learn Dutch language to speak. Because I think at the end of the day, that you only can grasp the culture of a country when you really speak the language, because otherwise you do not understand the nuances of the culture. But that is not per se necessary for everyone, because yes, we should speed up with, again, with exhibitions, which is important. And not only the old masters, but we have great modern painters, sculptors, and so on. Film is still possible. Maybe even nowadays, you can have outside theaters where you can watch a movie. The famous idea, what we always have in our mind, were those film screenings where you go by car, which is, of course, a fantastic idea and which is absolutely impossible in the Netherlands because we are overcrowded. But here you have space. Cycling is one of the things that is also in our hearts. And in fact, in 2 weeks' time, we have a major cycling event in Indianapolis, which is not Michigan, I know, but we are still on the ball with that. And that is a walk by places. And there we have several webinars, we have film screening, we have some interviews to promote the Dutch cycling. And of course, it also goes with, I wouldn't say the Dutch food immediately, but some of the Dutch ingredients like the Dutch cheese and so on is absolutely possible. I would be looking forward to visiting the professor in the university and elaborate on this theme, because at the end of the day, I think if you do understand the culture of your counterpart, the whole range of contacts and relations are being promoted so much more than when you don't know with whom you're dealing with.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you very much for that. Here's a very interesting question, and I think those of us in West Michigan have found this to be true. Culturally, the Michigan Dutch and the modern Netherlands could hardly be more different. Um, Specific references to social conservatism, and I know when my wife and I visited the Netherlands, some of our uh, um, acquaintances there, when they heard where we were from, were wondering about how conservative we really were. And we joked a little bit earlier about the Calvinists. It's very interesting. So, what might we do to bridge that sort of cultural gap there? I believe the more conservatism in Michigan Dutch and more liberal ideas of the country of the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's a very nice question. Of course, in the first place, language is a living tool. Absolutely. And I would almost advise wait another 50 years, because by that time we come so close to each other, because the amount of English or American words in Dutch is so vast and is every day growing, that maybe by that time we do speak Michigan English. Half of the time when I'm apping with my own children, they app back in English or in American. And we saw it already happening. With a small anecdote I can tell you, that when we got our first child and we were living in Turkey, we were the only people she learned Dutch from. So, because the rest was non-Dutch around her. And then when she was 2 or 2.5, we came back to the Netherlands, or we were on holidays on the Netherlands. And she was saying on her level, she was saying some words, but it was a high level, in fact, so much that some lady approached my wife and she said, "I'm so impressed by the level of Dutch of your child." And then a day later, it was raining, and she said, "Mummy, what a highly unpleasant weather is it today?" And then we were shocked, because a child of 2 should express herself in a different way. And there we saw that there is such a bridge already in generation, because her little nephews and cousins in the Netherlands, they were of course talking about there was a nasty weather or whatever. She was copying our language, nothing more. So it is a living, I think, unfortunately, it is even approaching each other. And I would keep my nice old Dutch in Michigan, which is so richer, so much richer than the highly influenced Dutch of this very moment in the Netherlands. I would be proud if I would speak the Dutch as they do in Michigan.
Thank you. We have a hello from the Dutch International Society in Grand Rapids, and a question there. Are there any initiatives in the works for educational opportunities on the elementary and secondary levels in the Midwest for Dutch language and culture?
Well, I'm very happy with this question, because, as I stressed before, education is so important. But I'm definitely over-asked here, because as consulate, we do not deal with this subject. But most probably it is our Consul General in New York. We will go back to them, because I would be surprised if we would not have these kind of supportive programs. In every single country, we do have them. The only point is that I do not know what we have in and for the United States. So let me go back to New York, and I come back to the person who asked this question from the International Society.
That's great. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. We will. Water is a very important topic to Michiganders. Surrounded by the Great Lakes, Michigan has more shoreline than any state other than Florida or California. And so water is important, and the Dutch are internationally known for water management issues. So there's a curiosity about what you mentioned earlier about water management, about water conversations between our two countries, in particular here in Michigan. And any more you can tell us about that? Are there any initiatives? I love that that picture of orange on the lake was something. I know that Chicago dyes the Chicago River green on St. Patrick's Day, but to dye it orange now that would be even more amazing. But what can you tell us about some water initiatives that we might be looking for in our state?
Oh. Well, we are really reaching out in the area of water in the whole Midwest. So it is for us not only Michigan, and we do have contacts also with Ohio and other states, but they differ in subject, of course, because it can be drinking water, it can be wastewater, it can be pollution, side water, all these kind of things. And as said, that together with the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development and the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, we set up several seminars on the water aspect, and this was definitely focused on water pollution by agriculture. On the other hand, there is a lot to do about wastewater and drinking water. So it is, we are looking out for all kinds of cooperations in that sense. Also, the Dutch Water Alliance is looking for partnerships in many fields. It can also be the prevention of flooding of rivers, what we are doing somewhere else. So I think we can handle the broad range of all kinds of water-related issues, but at the moment, it is indeed the agricultural pollution where we have been talking about. It was business-to-business talks. We had several of them, and now we look forward ourselves in further cooperation in the wastewater and drinking water sector. But whatever comes up from your side will be very much considered in the Netherlands, because there are several big companies and organizations mainly focusing on the United States.
I think another topic that came up was erosion mitigation. You know, on the Michigan side of Lake Michigan, there's a lot of concern about erosion of the dunes, and again, you know, I think the Netherlands wrote the book on a lot of that kind of management. So I think there's great interest over here on this side of Lake Michigan about some of those conversations.
Yeah, fantastic. We can explore that further. I think we know the feeling, what erosion means. And then the sea is also higher than the country, which gives a highly unpleasant feeling. So we do have every now and then we do have new projects to protect our shoreline, and we are absolutely in the middle of it now again. We invest an enormous amount of money, especially also in dikes. But what we also do is putting extra sand on the dunes and on the beaches and these kind of things, and getting that sand out of, in our case, the sea, by which the sea is getting a little bit deeper and taking up a little bit more water, and you're rising up the shoreline. So yes, we would like to get in contact with you about these aspects as well. Yeah, which of course is a different game indeed than only water, because this has to do with dredging and planning and yeah.
Thank you for that. You did mention travel before, and there's of course a lot of interest, a lot of eagerness to be able to travel again. Many folks here are eager to visit the Netherlands again. So what should we be looking for in terms of developments there? Things are seemingly happening very quickly now. I want to say post-COVID world. I guess we'll never, we'll always be with the specter of COVID now, now that we've experienced it. But what should we be looking for in terms of travel markers in the weeks and months coming ahead?
Well, I think now for the Netherlands, it is a little bit in the hands of the EU, and we are making steps over there. We are defining, and we did define the countries within the EU which are safe now. But yeah, you were mentioning the word post-COVID. 10 minutes before we were in this meeting, I saw that several islands in Greece, which were a COVID-free area to go to, are completely closed off again because of COVID. So it is changing from day to day, especially now, of course, with the different variants and in particular the Indian variant, settling down also in Europe. But okay, it is. We are working now with the EU to work out a plan, which now is more or less finished about the countries within Europe, and then we have to go to the countries outside of Europe, the safe countries. But there, I'm quite sure, will be also an element of reciprocity, because if we open up, then we would like to see the other country also to open up. Yeah. And then, of course, you are looking at the different levels of fighting at this moment, COVID. So I don't know how the Americans are in it.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, it seems like it's changing daily, but we appreciate the efforts that your country's making to open that up, and hopefully our country will do the same. I know, Consul, you have a hard stop. You've got to go to another session immediately after this one. I want to thank you so much for your time. It was such an informative presentation that you made, and your openness in this dialogue is wonderful. Again, if folks here want to keep in touch with the Chicago Consulate, they can find you on the web. They can call the office. They can email the office and work from there. Correct?
Yes, definitely. I think emailing at the moment, or maybe something via the social media, is the easiest. There is no use in handing out telephone numbers, because you never know if someone is working here, there, or. But the moment the email is there, we come back to you either via email or by telephone, and then you have the number, and then we will keep in contact about that.
Marvelous, marvelous. Again, thank you, Consul, for your time. We look forward to hosting you here in West Michigan as soon as that's able. And the door is open, the invitation is open. So whenever your schedule allows you and situations allow you to do that, we'd like to host you here. So hopefully that can happen soon. And Wilhelmine, thank you. Thanks again to the Netherland-America Foundation for being such a great partner. And we look forward to future collaborations.
Thank you.
Well, thank you also on my behalf to the World Affairs Council and the Netherlands-American Foundation. It was a great opportunity, but in particular, I would like to thank all the participants in attending this webinar, because it means that there is at least an eagerness to stay in contact, be it virtually or directly in contact. And once more, thank you, and hopefully tot ziens in Dutch. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being with us and taking part in this conversation.